Talks, desta vez com o Ricardo Pereira, que é co-founder e CTO aqui da Miles in the Sky, que fica aqui connosco na 42 de Lisboa. E hoje vai-nos falar sobre outro tema super interessante e que ainda por cima vocês podem pôr em prática, que é Building a Scalable Product. E esta só vai ser em inglês, desculpem, eu agora fiz esta introdução em português, mas vai ser em inglês. Pronto, obrigada a todos e vai ser uma sessão com muita conversa, por isso, por favor, não se sintam tímidos e coloquem as questões ao Ricardo e aproveitem aqui todo o conhecimento que ele vai partilhar connosco. Obrigada.
Cool, so hello, and to start, thanks a lot for being here. It's really cool to see so many people wanting to know about building a scalable product. So when I was challenged to do this talk, I considered the option of having a few slides to show you. Then I also realized that nobody likes to watch slides, so I decided not to have any slides, nor to give you any rules on how to build scalable products, because I don't think I own that source of information. This talk is supposed to be about sharing a bit of my experience and what we've done wrong, mostly, and what we've done right that's serving us today. Okay? So I'll share a few insights that I found, but I would like to start by asking, what do you think it is a scalable product? Because you joined a session to build a scalable product, so what the hell is a scalable product? There's no stupid answers, so just don't worry.
It's a product that scales in the future.
Okay.
That it can grow and still be usable. You don't have to replace it once it grows.
Cool.
Can I ask you one thing, if you can repeat when someone asks something, or because so people
can hear.
Yeah.
So basically the answer is building a product that serves you in the future, that can grow in the future, and you don't have to rebuild it. Okay, what else?
Modularity, right?
Modularity?
Yeah.
Yes. Everyone's shy. That's okay. Give them 10 minutes. We should start this with beers, I think. Okay, so I think the whole idea of scalable products tends to be, I don't know about yours, but tends to be a product that can support lots of people, that scales very well, especially if you're into technology, a product that performs. Okay. Now, for me, and the experience is, if your product is serving a business, building a scalable product is about preventing bottlenecks in your business. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're building an application that can take up to 1 billion users. Is this scalable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, it seems like. But now let's say your application does some kind of sensory, so it checks the content that users are putting in. For example, you're checking for nudity or sex, whatever it is. And you have a team of 2 people to filter this content. Is your product still scalable? No, because it can take up to 1 billion users, but now you have one bottleneck, right? So instead of that, let's say you have these really cool applications that you serve to companies, for example, where you serve a single infrastructure to each company. And each infrastructure can take up to 1 billion users. You have one company as client that puts you 100,000 users. You very well serve the purpose. Now let's say you have your sales team work for 6 months, and all of a sudden you have 10 new companies joining the same day. Is this still scalable? I mean, it depends, right? How are you onboarding? Do you have infrastructure as code? Can you click one button and spin an entire infrastructure for one company that is your new client? Or do you have a customer success team that has to fly into the company and build the product on-prem. If this is the case, you might not have such a scalable product, right? So I think building scalable products ends up being preventing bottlenecks for your businesses. And when I was saying that I don't have the whole truth is, depending on your business, those bottlenecks will be completely different, right? If you're building something that is B2C, if you're building something that is B2B, depending on the nature of the companies you are serving, you need different types of scalability. And so, given this intro, if you want to build a scalable product, and how we started at Miles, was defining the technologies we were about to use. Okay? And my first recommendation is, even for your own projects, if you're building a small project at home, if you're starting a company on your own, or if you're looking for funding to start a big company, choose your technologies very well. And what kind of variables do you think it can go into choosing a technology? So let's say we want to, the case of Miles, let's say we want to build an application that allows anyone to create a school and students to enroll and do some challenges, have some sort of education, or think on the software 42. What would you consider when choosing these technologies? You guys are techies, so this should be the easy question. Go. Versatility. Versatility in which sense?
Like the user should be able to use that kind of technology and create the website or whatever on multiple devices, depending on which device.
Okay. So choosing a technology that allows you to build for mobile, web. Okay, that's cool.
That has like huge community or resources. It helps a lot, like improving development time.
Yeah. Okay, so choosing technology.
A scalable one. A technology or product that is scalable in order that if you have more students or more people, you can grow with the school.
But when I say about technologies, maybe this was not clear. Like, will you go for a backend in Python or a backend in some other language? Will you build your front end in JavaScript, in Vue.js, in React, in Angular? Will you use Ruby on Rails? What will you use as an infrastructure? Will you set your own server? Will you configure your Nginx and go hardcore into server? Or will you use microservices? How do you choose this? Now, the result of choosing this and hopefully everything working is that students can enter the platform, they can click buttons and stuff happens. But how do you choose this? Because you have a blank page, right? You don't even have a GitHub repository yet. So what do you choose to build your product?
You should choose something that has less bottlenecks, as you can see, including scalability, thinking on user base, thinking on development, which one is going to cause less bottlenecks in development, and the use cases you can see. And also, don't choose, I will say, don't choose on, never use your personal preference, like, oh, I like C, I like Python. I would say we also need to choose thinking on what's good for your products.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thinking on scalability, I'm just rephrasing, don't follow your preference just because. Cool. All right, so we got a few. I would say choosing the technologies, in the case of Miles, it ended up being, so what we've worked with, okay, and the knowledge we had in-house. I mean, if you're a single technical founder and you don't have that much experience in cloud, and you don't happen to know front end, you know a bit of Python, it might be an overkill to build an application where you have your infrastructure all set on the cloud, you're building your front end on Vue.js or React, your back end in a serverless infrastructure that you still have to learn how to set up, right? So this might be perfect for a team that actually has the experience on how to do this. Are you building this product just for fun? Then hell yes, go for that. Are you building this product with a certain goal? I mean, there's no shame in using no code or low code if that's the case. Okay, if you're business oriented and you're trying to build a product, there's a lot of advantage in building it with low code. Now, what are the disadvantages of this? How much will I pay when this thing grows? How much does it cost me to transition this to a technology that is open source? How can I hire? Is this a technology that has a lot of people to hire? Okay, for example, the technologies we choose, and one of the reasons we chose them, we're using Vue.js and Python mostly, and our infrastructure is on AWS. These are technologies that are very easy to ramp up, and this made a huge difference for us as a company, because we hired 10 students from 42 that didn't know anything about our technology, about these technologies we use, but we could ramp them up in 2 or 3 months. And 2 or 3 months is great, because if you're looking to hire someone with this amount of knowledge in the market, it's very expensive and probably will take you 2 to 3 months. And 42 is great because it gives you the basis so that we as a company could ramp up these students. So choosing your technology, I think, is step number one, and I would say one of the most important into being scalable. And scalability goes a lot into what your colleague was saying, how will I maintain it in the future? When this thing grows, how can I hire 5, 10 people that can help me to build this? I have a laundry list to follow. Okay, the second, in case you choose to own your own infrastructure, so if you're not going for the cases of no code or low code, I would say invest in your infrastructure. So in the case of Miles, we have 2 technical co-founders, so myself and Luis. And for the first 6 months, Luis was entirely focused on infrastructure. And I was entirely focused on building the product. So building, the buttons that nobody likes to build and the endpoints for those buttons to work, managing databases, etc. And Luis was working on this very weird infrastructure as code. So basically, he was focused on this. During the day, I would program and tell him, hey, look, I'm struggling with this way of developing something because it's taking me way too much. After that night or the day after, he would tell me, oh, that's fixed. It's now way more fast because I've implemented this, this, and that. These implementations could be as simple as when you push something, make a build for a certain domain, for a certain infrastructure. Or, I don't know if any of you develop in the cloud, but it's horrible. The cloud is great because you have microservices, but it's horrible to develop in the cloud itself. So recreating a local environment where you can work like you were developing in Flask or a normal framework, and this working on the cloud, it's a huge amount of work. Now having this allows us to accelerate development like 10 or 20 times. And so the first 6 months, we were basically focused on infrastructure and building the basics of product. We already needed help by then, but if I were to hire anyone at that point, that person would suffer a lot working with us because everything was a mess. So after these 6 months, we had an okay infrastructure. We had environments. We were able to onboard new clients. We were able to have local development running to deploy in the cloud. All the main pieces worked, so we could then hire. Okay? But I think this is important. If you focus on infrastructure first, and to do this, probably you realize it's the opposite of most startups are doing, because I do some advising to startups, technical advising, and they always start trying to hire developers that don't cost them much, and this is because they don't have much money. And hiring developers that don't cost you much money means they don't have experience. If they don't have experience, they will build you solutions that are not very good for you in the future. And this is where your product starts wrong. Because it might overfit to the case you're doing, but in 6 months, in 1 year, you will probably have failed all your assumptions about your business. And you will need to change your product. And if you have an infrastructure that is really hard to maintain, that is really hard to change, that is not modular at all, that's going to cost you way more money than hiring a senior person at the beginning. So I think one of the most important steps is infrastructure and starting with some level of seniority. And now, for you guys, if you don't have this seniority, there's a lot of people working in the space that are happy to provide you guidance. And most of the times, guidance is all you need. Okay, because you guys are smart, you can click buttons fast, and you can make things work. The problem is the things you don't know that you need to make them work. So if you just seek advice, just talk to CTOs of startups or VPs of techs of some companies, and look for people that have this, for companies that have the same stack you're trying to build your product on, and you'll have great pieces of advice. Okay, if those companies are working for 3-4 years with that stack, they probably can shortcut you 8 months, 1 year of development just with 2 or 3 talks. Okay, and people are very, very willing to do that. Questions? No, thanks.
Can you give us some example of bottlenecks that you recommend?
On the infrastructure level, deciding the infrastructure, sure. So, things that went wrong. Let me see. So, for example, we went into a serverless database. We decided to go serverless. It was cool. It seems like it would optimize costs because it shuts down, goes up, shuts down, goes up, and it had a lot of limitations. Right? We couldn't. There were some visualization products we wanted to plug into our database that we couldn't. That particular database didn't allow us to go from SQL 5 to 8, which then prevented us from using a bunch of syntax that it's really, really useful if you're working with data, but you don't have available in 5. And so eventually, that decision led to a migration that created a huge chaos in the company because clients were in and everything was exploding. And that migration was done in 2 very hectic nights. And that results from a bad decision. Right? We decided going serverless to optimize a few cents, and it ended up costing way more to then migrate to something that was good for us. So that's one case. Cases that went well. So recreating this AWS environment in our local environment was spectacular. Because right now we can have, if we hire any of you can start working on the cloud just writing Python in your computer. You don't even see behind the scenes what's going on, right? You just git push and a lot of stuff happen. That it's really cool because you can start immediately building the product and you don't have to worry about knowing a bunch of things from cloud and DevOps in order to start contributing to the product. So that was a great decision. And when we started, Luis and I had this goal. Let's make code as fast as low code. This was one of our goals. So we invested probably 50% of our development time into building productivity tools for developers that would join. We invested a lot in this. I think the biggest product we have in Miles is an internal product. It's a product that allows any junior to make a build, for example, to serve an infrastructure with code. It allows anyone to see our schemas, to create things in the database, to version the database, which is something actually hard to do. So we invested a lot in the productivity of future developers so that when we hired, because we knew we wouldn't hire someone with a lot of experience, we could onboard them as fast as possible. And that was, I think, a good decision. Lots of mistakes in the middle, of course. Cool. So, third point is, if you're starting alone, that's not a problem. If you're starting with a colleague, that's not a problem to build a product. Because you guys code, so I don't have to tell you about Git. My suggestion is, don't worry about streamlining your code too soon, okay? Luis and I went on this crazy Git hell for 6 months, and it was okay. By then, we were building, drag and dropping to S3 to make a build, so that you see how manual this was. But as soon as you start hiring people, you need to streamline the code, okay? You need to have environments, you need to have some sort of processes for people to work. Because you'll have, or you will be juniors, or you will have juniors working building your product with you, and you need a way to review their tasks, right? You need a way to have pull requests, you need a way to merge everyone's code into a repository to serve your infrastructures with a certain repository. You need ways to do hot fixes, right? To fix something in production. And so I think once you have an infrastructure you're happy with, once you have a way to work that you are happy with, you should, as fast as you can, streamline your code. And this is something we did. We took 1 or 2 months to streamline everyone. And during this time, we had just hired 5 people from 42. And they went to this crazy Git hell. So for 2 months, they were basically pushing, code was getting loose, lost. I was approving codes like on the fly, sitting with them, watching code. Okay, change this, change that, push. Oh, hell, we lost something. Okay, it was like this for 2 months. And then we said, it's enough. Maybe we need a more professional way of doing things. And we streamlined the code. We went, so by then, we studied a lot on how to do this. We read a bit on Git flow. We had a few ideas from working with other projects. But we realized that by talking to 3 or 4 people that were on companies similar to ours, they had a process that is very similar to the one that we currently have. So the suggestion I was giving, you don't have to, if you don't have the expertise, just go and ask. For us, in this case, it served us well. Okay, so that's third point. And fourth, for me, the most important, something I strive to do at Miles, is the team that you hire and the culture that you set. Because building a scalable product, like we say here, sometimes it involves working at 6 a.m. Okay? It involves people being very positive about what they are doing, because it's hard. And you have to create an environment, or you have to put yourself in an environment where it's okay to fail, and you have probably no idea of what's going to go wrong in the next few months. So what we try to do at Miles is, I mean, we work here, we have this space that is pretty cool, where we have designers and developers working together. And I think, I mean, there's one example that I like, that one guy told me that when he entered Miles, he found very weird, because every time we see a bug, we make this stupid sound like, boom, bug. Oh, awesome. Now, what's up? And he was like, these guys are nuts, because this is an error, and they're happy with the error. And I think we managed to propagate a culture and a mindset that it's actually okay to have errors. You know, it's what you should struggle, because the dangerous errors are the ones that don't explode in your face. They explode in your customer's face. So if they explode in your face, you're kind of fine. The problem are those that don't explode. So we created this cool environment where people are happy to come here and work. We allow dogs. For me, that's very important. For some of the people that work here, it's very important. We allow people to work remote if they have to work remote. If you have a doctor's appointment, you don't have to put in vacations. We don't even have vacations concept. You can take as many vacations as you want. I'll tell you, people don't take vacations. But yeah, building this culture makes it super easy for you to bring new people and to solve problems when they happen. Like this week, we were late. We have to deliver something in a week. And I can tell you that the entire team has been working non-stop, every night, weekends. And you can't enforce people to do this if you don't have the right environment, right? Because you can't force people to work at nights or at weekends by their own will. So making sure that every person, every developer that works in your team feels part of the project. They can contribute, they can be heard, they can have an opinion on what they are building. You don't pass them like very limited scope tasks. I think that builds the right mindset so that people can work more, work better, and think on creative solutions for problems you may have that prevent your product from being scalable. So, and this is something we read very, very recently, that if you want innovation, you need to make sure you have engineers very close to the business, right? If you make sure you have engineers very close to the business, then you're more likely to have innovation at your product. And we try to do this. In here, the fact that this room is basically a product room. So every developer can go and talk to design, suggest something, make tweaks, and this is what ends up at the end of the customer. Okay? So those are my suggestions for building a scalable product. Okay, overall, that at the end that will depend a lot on the product you are building, of course. But these are, I think, the things that make a difference at Miles, and where we are trying to make sure that these 4 pillars are very well set. Cool. So now the monologue is over. If you guys have questions, something you'd like to know, I'll happily answer. So, in September of last year, we had a platform that, due to a lot of decisions, it was not modular at all. The infrastructure was super model and super scalable, but let me give you an example. In our platform, you have the concept of peer review, so you can create a peer review. The feature of peer review, this example is better. Look, you can submit things in our platform, like submit a file. If you are in a group, the code to submit a file in a group would be an entire endpoint. And if you want to write the code for a student to submit a file individually, it would be a piece of code. As you can imagine, conceptually, the only difference is you submitting and propagating to a group, whereas the others, it's just for you. So our platform was not modular at all in terms of educational experience. It was not the infrastructure, so that part was amazing, because we invested 6 or 7 months by then. But this part was very hard. And we basically set to refactor the entire thing we've built for a year in 3 weeks. Okay, to make it completely modular. And we spent probably a week planning, like whiteboarding, just thinking on all the dependency systems, how we would build this, all the pitfalls. And then I went on vacations. I went 1 week on vacations, because I had to. And the team was here, and they built the entire prototype for this, because we try to build a prototype first, and if this works, then we try to build it for production. So they built the prototype in 1 week, and we had 2 weeks to refactor everything based on that prototype. That was very hard, because first you have to convince the entire company that it makes sense to break everything you've built for a year to make it easier to develop. Because for the student, it was more or less the same. But it was something to accelerate development time. Then you have to say you'll do this in 3 weeks and present a lot of confidence. Because if you don't present a lot of confidence, people get scared. And then you have to build it in 3 weeks. And we did that, and it was very hard, because we were building multiple pieces for 2 weeks and a half, and we were praying that when we put those pieces together, everything we planned for a week would make sense. If we misplanned, this would be a total fuck up, and we were screwed. We had a plan B. But but at the end, 3 weeks later, we got a new platform. It was very modular. It's still modular to this day. And I think one of the reasons that we can shift so fast and adapt so well, because we can, it's actually one of the things about our product, it's very versatile. It's given to this effort done in September. So it was hard, it was technically hard, and it was a hard decision to make. Because people start thinking you're a bit loopy to like throw away 1 year of work, but it made sense at the end.
My question is like, what you should like look for when hiring junior developers in like exciting projects like mine? What should you look for?
As a junior developer?
No, as a imagine if you're the owner of a new project with a very specific product. What should you look for when trying to hire a new or junior developer?
So I go by a very simple rule. I have lunch every day with the people I work with. So if I don't like the idea of having lunch with that people every day, I don't hire them. If I like the idea of having lunch, then I hire them. And that's true, I've hired everyone for our team without a single technical interview. And I think it's up to that, because you can always build technical skills. Well, we're an education company, so for us it's actually easier to make the ramp up. But that's the only thing I honestly care, is can you contribute for the positive environment that I'm trying to create for the last 2 years? Because if you're not contributing to this environment, if you're someone I don't like to have lunch with, then I don't really care if you're a good developer.
Is that it depends on if like the person is annoying or if they show like interest or like they show excitement about the product itself?
I can't say. It's very, I don't know, man. You have a conversation with someone, and at the end of conversation, you kind of say, well, I like this guy. I could have beers with him. Or you can say, oh, this fucker's annoying. And then it's a no-go. But for me, it's like, are you curious? Are you actually nice? Do you say things nicely? Do you provide feedback nicely? Do you want to help people around you? Are you willing to work when we have to work? Because we go by this rule. Sometimes you have to work on Sundays until 3 a.m. And that's life. The next day you can go to the beach. If you wake up hangovering, don't come to work. And you don't have to explain. But sometimes you have to. And can you be part of this? Does it make sense to the ones that we are hiring? Does it make sense to them? Because some people like to work from 9 to 5. And they don't want to be in this culture. It's like work is work, life is life. We try to do something different because we're friends. I'm happy to work with 2 of my best men that were my groomsmen at my wedding. So, I mean, here I think we try to work with friends at the end of the day. Yeah, I think so.
That's the definition of a work.
Yeah, that you finish. I mean, for example, we finish works. I don't do this because I'm married, so I can't always go for beers. But the guys, almost every day, they go for beers after work. 2 of them live together. I live together with another guy that works here. So I think we have a good spirit. And that's very good.
How do you think it's like the best way or the way that you use to separate like work environment and friend environment?
I think transparency and providing feedback in a positive way. So in here, and this is something important that you guys, some of you might struggle with this more than others. Your code is not a representation of yourselves, right? Assuming you will write code for a company. So providing feedback on your code is not an attack on you as a person. So if you're transparent and if you're giving feedback constantly and everyone can give feedback to everyone, then it's okay, right? You're just trying to build something together. The concept of hierarchy, we try to abolish that. So I just think the only hierarchy that I believe it makes some sense is I have to make decisions and I am liable for those decisions. So there are certain decisions that I should be the one making. It's not because the other people they are not able to make those decisions, it's because it's my job to make those decisions. So that's the only thing that I think hierarchy makes sense. Now, for everything else, just be transparent and provide feedback very, very quickly.
Steve Jobs used to say that you hire people just by thinking, could I work for this guy?
Yeah, that's a great.
That's the rule of thumb.
Yeah, I like the ones that I have lunch with because I end up having lunch with people every day.
In your program, how ChatGPT is helping for you or not?
Sorry?
In your one developing, is ChatGPT helping you or not? Are you using ChatGPT or not?
Is ChatGPT helping? Yeah. So first of all, it helps everyone in the team, right? I think everyone is using ChatGPT one way or another to solve a simple bug. In our particular case, it has a huge potential to help. We've made a few integrations because we have to create content. And creating content is actually very expensive and time consuming. So let's say you want to provide a course in Python or in C, JavaScript, doesn't matter. It can take you, I don't know, it can cost you 5K, 10K, 1 month, 2 months to build something that is good. Especially if you don't have the knowledge in-house, right? If you have the knowledge in-house, it's one thing. If you have to bring that knowledge from someone else, it's another thing. So ChatGPT has a huge potential to help us accelerate the creation of content. And we are using, we've made a few integrations where you basically say, I want a course in X, Y, and Z, and it creates the syllabus, and then it allows you to create the missions, because our product is basically people learning through missions, so it's mission-based. So it helps us creating the content that people need to or could consume in order to solve a certain mission. It's for sure helping in that. And I think it will be very important in terms of evaluation, assessment of students. We haven't done anything yet in that part, but I think it will play a major role in that. Anything else?
It's probably a silly question. Ed doesn't have experience, but you talked about modularity. So much
Sorry?
Object-oriented programming in the platform and how to achieve that flexibility and modularity. So are you using a lot of code?
So we use Python as a backend, and we have JavaScript on the front end wrapped in the framework, so Vue.js. But the modularity has more to do with concepts than it has to do with code. Yeah, so, I mean, let's say, if you want to configure a mission, having a toggle that tells you if that mission is group or not, and basically the whole logic on how to populate the database coming from that. So you don't, and then every time you have something that is group, like a submission or a document that belongs to the group, follows the same logic of populating groups. So I don't have to create a specific logic if you're making a submission of a document in a group to populate the document for the entire group, and then a different logic to populate a document. What we try to do is have a logic to populate groups, and then whether you submit a document or you fill in a document, or or a survey, you use the same logic to populate groups. It's one example, but it's more conceptually, it's modular in the conceptual level, not in the code, because the code is, we try to make it modular, of course, but that's good practice, I would say. Yeah.
Do you agree that the main threat for doing something that will not be scalable is because it's cheaper or easier?
No.